connection between Sinbad and David is heavily foreshadowed all the way during the Syndra arc, actually. Not only was it foreshadowed, but the explanation that was given for it was pretty well, actually. It was right under our noses the whole time. Now, before I get into this video, there are two important notices, quick ones, that I should give. The first one is a massive spoiler warning for those who are not caught up to the latest chapter of the Adventures of Sinbad manga. Well, I wouldn't say latest because it's actually finished in Japanese, but in the English translations, I mean the latest. So 178, around then, there are a few chapters out after that, but if you are not up to 178, chapter 178 of the Sinbad Adventures manga, then I wouldn't recommend watching this, because this video will be discussing major events and spoilers for the most climactic arc of that series. So if you were planning on reading it, I would actually put this video in your watch to later or videos for later playlists or something, and just once you've caught up to the Adventures of Sinbad, then you should watch this if you want to, because that is an amazing manga and that final arc is absolutely insane, and I do not want to spoil that experience for you. So if you loved Magi, I highly recommend you read that final arc of the Adventures of Sinbad. Secondly, this is for my subscribers actually. So in the description, there is an sort of a notice about my hiatus status. So I did say that I was going on a huge hiatus, which only lasted 2-3 months, and I'm still sort of in that phase, but I just wanted to give an update for those who were a bit confused on why I'm uploading now. So that'll be in the description for you guys. And of course, if you aren't, I'd recommend subscribing, of course, if you want to watch more Magi content. And hopefully ReZero in the future. I'll be making some stuff on ReZero. Now, without further ado, let us get into the video. Now, when, how, and why? Now, this connection formed during the most intense arc of the Adventures of Sinbad, during the war in Syndra, where countless people were slaughtered and the main characters were massacred. After some events, he was transported to Aldaman's sacred palace by Falan, which was a great moment, honestly. I really like that moment. If you remember, Falan was actually one of the magicians in the Almatoran arc, with Solomon and all that, and she was actually one of the magicians along with Alibaba that betrayed Solomon, so clearly she is not the best of people. They had set up an attack and slaughtered the people of Syndra, and they were actually responsible for everything that happened in Syndra. So of course, if you've read the final arc, you know this. There were two reasons as to why they were doing this. First, they wanted to make Sinbad, who is a singularity, fall into depravity. That would be a huge win for them. If they could get a singularity, someone who is not affected by destiny, onto their side and fall into depravity, that would be an amazing accomplishment for them and a huge win. The second reason is that they needed to have all of the people in Syndra's Roh dye black. They needed it to turn black before they died, so that once they can collect the Roh from these dead bodies, they would be able to make a dark spot using all of the black Roh and the massive amount of Maho that they collect. So, two things right there. The first plan, of course, failed, as Sinbad's will never wavered and he did not fall into depravity. He was then transported back to Syndra, as Sinbad travelled through the battlefield, seeing the dead bodies of many of his friends and generals and his people, which was pretty gruesome, and I think that was an amazing scene. He decided to stay back in the country after everyone left. He encountered the braless Falan, amazing art design by the way, yet again, and she was actually surprised to see he had stayed behind, and she actually thought he was a bit insane for doing so. Here she turns to Saradine. Well, she turns her into a black vessel and uses her to make the dark spot. Now, using all of the black Maho they collected and using the black metal vessel which she turned Saradine into, the combination of those two things, she was able to make a dark spot, right in that area, and it was incredibly intense. And as I stated previously, this was from all the people of Syndra that they had collected as part of their plan. She wants to make She wants to make Il-Ilha, I think that's how you pronounce it. The previous god descend from the dark spot. Well, one of the gods, sorry. She wanted him to descend from the dark spot, as summoning Il-Ilha was her ultimate goal of creating this war. That's the whole point of Aldaman, right? They want to bring that god back into power. What came from the other dimension was a medium, right? Similar to the one that appeared at the end of season 2 of the anime. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, remember when all of the Metal Vessel users teamed up in Mondstadt to fight that massive beast, like Sinbad, all of the generals, all of the kings, and then you had all of the kings from the Ko Empire and all that stuff? That thing, so it was a medium like that, but something about this one was clearly different. Rather, this medium actually grabbed a hold of Sinbad, and against his will, he began to absorb it without choice. He just absorbed it because of what the medium was doing. Now, this was because of David, who had descended, and he was actually the one inside of the medium. Now, if you're wondering how he got there and how he got to the other dimension, that is actually to do with the Almatoran arc, and you can actually read back on that and see what he did to ascend to that place. This, he wasn't able to do as he pleased there, so that's why he wanted to get into Sinbad's body, so Sinbad could truly ascend as a singularity, and then he could become God, like we saw at the end of Magi. Are you still keeping up with me? I know it's a bit confusing, well, for those who aren't too familiar with all the terms, but I hope I'm doing a good job explaining it, and if I'm not, please do comment and I will explain any questions you have. Now, by having Sinbad absorb him and the medium, his Maho had been placed into Sinbad, not just David's actually, but the Maho and Ruh of all of the people that had been killed and used to make the dark spot on the medium had also been put inside of him. So it's the same situation that happened with Alibaba and Qasim, how Alibaba had Qasim, his Maho within him, but this was on a completely different scale. Now, he had the Ruh of hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions actually, of people inside of him, not just one person like Alibaba. And this of course included Saradine's Maho and Ruh as well, and actually that she explains to him, because he's able to communicate with every person he took in, she explains to him within him, that's an odd phrase, but that's what happened, that he was now able to use Zafar because she had his Maho and Ruh inside of him. Though the case of David may be a bit different and special because of the way David did it and the way David was sort of the one who orchestrated this whole thing. He seems to have actually, he had a foothold in his body as well. Not to control it, but he was able to sort of, as we saw in the final arc, talk to Sinbad and give him voice. Like, he was the voice in his head, which, was turning him. I wouldn't say evil, because Sinbad had good intentions, but it was like the devil whispering in his ear, quite literally in this case. But this was mainly demonstrated as when he took control of Sinbad's body momentarily in that moment, and he killed Fairland permanently, which was a crazy scene in my opinion. I really liked Fairland, but it is what it is. When he comes back to his senses, he has the exact same problem that Alibaba had after taking in Qasim's Maho. The Maho and Ruh inside of him was tearing him apart, and if left unchecked, it would have killed him. He could no longer access his Djinn transformation due to this, just like Alibaba couldn't, and that's when he goes to meet the clan that can manipulate Maho, so that he could unite the Maho within himself. The exact same thing that happened with Alibaba, which Sinbad did say he had the same problem before, all the way back when they first met Sinbad, well, when they went to Sindra for the first time. So this was foreshadowed all the way back then, which I think is incredible, to be honest. I know I went a bit off topic with the final part of the training, because he does meet Raiha, the magician girl, one of the generals of Sinbad. He meets her and she helps him kind of unite all of the Maho within him. It is quite a long story, and like I said, if you want to get all the details, I would recommend reading it, because that is also a small, very, very short and small arc, but it was very good. The biggest and most obvious foreshadowing, though, would be when it shows that he has already half fallen into depravity when he was fighting the other magician during the Sindra arc. Remember, it was the guy said that he had halfway fallen into depravity, and how that was possible. Now, I actually have my own take on this. This part I am not sure about, so I would actually love to hear your opinions on this. So what I think is that it is impossible to be consistently halfway fallen into depravity. You can't just be half and half all the time. We have never seen anything like it, and it is just too ridiculous of a feat to do. It's just not, I don't think that's possible. What I think it was when Sinbad was half fallen into depravity, that was a false assessment that was made by that magician. What the truth is that the half of Sinbad that's light Ruh, that's good Ruh, that is just Sinbad's own Ruh. but the half that's fallen into depravity, that is actually all of David's ruh. So it's not that Sinbad is half and half, it's half of it is Sinbad's that he's using and the other half is David. That is what I think, because David clearly has, like I said before, a foothold in his body, and he's using sort of all the dark ruh that he took in the Maho from David and the people, and that is that half that we do see him using. Now, that's what I think about how he's half and half. I really, really do think that that was foreshadowing that what we saw of Sinbad was not, everything wasn't, it didn't meet the eye of what we all saw, right? And obviously that's true, but what I think, like I said, half David, half Sinbad. Because Sinbad himself, I don't think he would ever fall into depravity, ever. Well, at least not Sinbad at that point that we saw him. He was kind of shrewd, but I just do not see him even halfway falling into depravity. And I don't even think that's maybe I'm forgetting an example where someone did fall halfway, because you can switch between, but you cannot be cleanly halfway between both. Maybe I'm forgetting someone, but I just do not think that's possible. Now that's it. If you have any further questions on this topic or anything else, please do comment, because I read and reply to all of them. And if you enjoyed this and you wish to see more Magi content, consider subscribing. It's all good quality like this, and it's your choice. If you don't want to, that's fine as well, because I'm grateful that you watched it to the end. That means a lot in and of itself. And have a nice day. That's all from me.